What's going on, everyone? Jax here, and today we have the Mazda Miata. So the Miata has a long history, stretching back 30 years to when it debuted in 1989. And that's great and all, but nobody cares. Nobody really cares. Of course they do. The Miata is one of the most significant cars of all time. Yep, still don't care. Still don't care at all. There's only one thing that matters about the Mazda Miata. Oh, really? And what's that? The way it drives. I was getting to that. Not fast enough. Not fast enough. Give me like 5 minutes. Give me 5 more minutes and I'll get to the driving part, okay? Just 5 minutes. No, that's really not gonna work for me. Well, it's gonna have to work for you because this is my video and I wanna talk about the history and the engineering and the powertrain and the concept of Jinba Atai, which means horse and rider as one. And it's like the core central philosophy of Mazda's, like, well, hey, wait, nope. Hey. We're gonna start with the driving portion because that's what the audience cares about. It'll all be over soon, okay? Let's get to the important part right now. Personally, I think the Miata looks good. Now, I know there's some people that might disagree, and they're entitled to their opinions, but they're wrong. And they're more than entitled to their wrong opinions, but they are wrong. The Miata looks great in the ND generation. You know, the NC was a little rough. The NA and the NB are classics, but in the ND generation, the Mazda Miata has presence, stance, and style, and it looks really good overall. But it's not the looks that matter. For a car that costs $36,000, as you see it here, there's a little bit of black plastic in the cabin, but it's got a decent amount of features and amenities. But you know what? That doesn't matter either. And for people who are above average size, like myself, there is not an ounce of extra space in the cabin. There's really no extra space in the cabin. But you guessed it, that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters about this car is the way that it drives. It drives like no other car that's on sale today. I don't mean no other car in its class or any other car in its class. Proper grammar, any other car in its class. I mean literally no other car on sale today. It's analog, it's tactile, it's communicative. It doesn't drive like any other car on the market, mainly because any other car bigger than a Lotus feels like a cumbersome sledgehammer compared to the lightweight, featherweight, perfectly balanced Miata. Driving a Miata is utterly joyous. It's a joyous experience. I literally laughed out loud multiple times during my week with the Miata for no other reason than it was so much fun to drive. I had never driven a Miata of any kind longer than around a cone course years ago, and I definitely had never driven the ND platform Miata, and it is simply a joy, and I am not making that up. I laughed out loud. Why? It's just that much fun. It's that enjoyable to drive around in this car. This is a totally different experience to anything else that you can drive. Just take the top, for example, the fact that it's a convertible. With one hand, you can lower it. You undo the latch above your head, throw it back, push it down, it locks in place. When you're ready to put it back up, you flip a lever and pull it back up over your head. It's simple, easy, it's pure, and that's what the Miata is all about. This Miata Club has the optional Brembo, BBS, and Recaro seat option, which is like $4,500, but it is 100% worth it. No joke, 100% worth it. Seriously, if you get a Miata Club without this option, you're missing out. You're missing out on the performance enhancements, and you're missing out on the striking visuals, because the black trim and black mirrors look amazing, and the Recaro seats are nearly perfect. Are they as good as my beloved Civic Type R seats? Yeah, they just might be, even though there's not a ton of extra space in the Miata and the Civic fit me a little bit better, but they are that good. They are perfectly contoured, they are heated, and they hold you in place while you're having a great time. And speaking of the Civic Type R, you should totally check out my review of the Civic Type R, which is gonna be up here somewhere. Really? Now you're just promoting yourself? No. Just give me a few more minutes, almost done. The relationship between the steering wheel, the shifter, the pedals, it's unlike any car that I've ever driven, and I mean that sincerely. They're so perfectly in sync with each other. It's almost supernatural. It's almost some kind of Mazda witchcraft to get that level of interactivity between all of the major components that you need to drive a car perfectly, quickly, smoothly. Despite being compromised on space because of my size, the steering wheel is sort of in my lap chest area. The Mazda steering needs only the slightest touch to change direction. The clutch needs only the slightest press to engage. The shifter needs only the slightest pull to grab another gear. The new engine's 181 horsepower, uprated from 155 the year earlier, feel great. It feels so much more alive. It's got so much more pull than the Miatas of the past. Even the NB and the NC, they felt somewhat anemic, but this one feels quick, it's sprightly, it's quick on its feet when you're driving, and it doesn't feel like you're wishing for another 1,000 RPM or another 10 or 20 horsepower. And that throaty, roary, snorty exhaust sounds great while doing so. Seriously, the Miata's 4-cylinder has this nice little throaty like growl when it starts up. It's great. It's got this little like let's go out and play kind of 4-cylinder vibe. I love it. The only thing I wish is that had like more pop on the overrun or something like that, but man, it sounds good when you're winding it up. So how does the Miata handle a local back road? Let's find out. You can probably see by the exaggerated perspective of the GoPro that this car's a little tight on me, but that's okay. I don't mind one bit because it has a convertible roof, so headroom, not a problem. So how does it steer? Well, really fast, in case you were wondering. There's a little bit of play on center, a little bit of a dead spot, but the steering is very quick. It's also reasonably light, but it weights up really nicely as you go into a turn. Oh, I thought that white Ford was a police officer, but it's just a white Ford that had broken down. Ford jokes. The shifter is absolute perfection. Like literal perfection, like it's perfect. Got this little tiny golf ball knob. Feels great in the hand. That was a plastic bag. Could have killed us. The throws are short and very precise. It just slots right into gear. I mean, you could not ask for a better shifter than in this car. Combined with the steering, it's phenomenal. Notice the absurd amount of storage right there. It's about the size of a credit card. I have one dynamic complaint. It's probably the brakes. They're firm, but it requires a pretty heavy foot to get full stop. That might be a little disconcerting on a racetrack. Now let's take this on my little handling road, see how the ride is. Now I know the steering wheel is probably not ideally placed for me. It's sort of in my lap here, but the driving position's not too bad, even for a tall person. Now the car's firm as you'd expect on this handling road, but to be honest, it's more softly sprung and damp than you would think. There's a fair amount of body roll, which is just sort of surprising when you're driving a Miata. Most of the impact harshness comes from the relatively thin tires, but the suspension is fairly comfortable. In fact, I would say if I own this car, I might even firm it up a little bit more and definitely probably eliminate some of that body roll. One thing this car is not wanting for, at least anymore, is power. Power is very decent. It's got a good amount of get up and go to it. You get into first gear and give it some gas and it's downright quick. It hits a 60 in like 5.7 seconds, somewhere around there. It's not gonna leave you wanting. It's not gonna hang you out to dry when you're pulling out into traffic, that's for sure. This is probably the most road feel, the most tactile response. I mean, you can literally feel what the front wheels are doing in this car. But you can feel them moving around. The shifter vibrates while you're in the car. The wheel squirms in your hand. It feels alive. It feels fun, like the car is urging you on. Except for this guy in the pickup truck who's braking into this corner for no apparent reason. Yes, we'll all slow down for you. So there's nothing like the Mazda Miata, nothing at all. Nothing on the market is even remotely close to a 2-seat lightweight roadster with impeccable handling. What about something like a good used C5 Corvette or a Mustang GT or even a Camaro SS1 LE? I mean, for the Mazda's as-tested price of $36,000, you could get a very good used car. Could you buy a better car for $36,000 or less? I'm actually not sure that you could. See, the Mazda reminds us of why so many of us are in this hobby in the first place. That sort of purity, that simpleness of driving, of just being with the machine, interacting with the machine, and dominating a back road using nothing but the tools given to you by the car. No electronic stability control, no fancy handling, no 305 series tires. It's a partnership between the driver and the machine. And I would argue that for $36,000 or less, there are pretty much no other options. It will motivate you to dive deeper into the hobby, to learn how to heel and toe, to shift as quickly as possible, to know what gear to be in on certain corners. The Mazda makes you better, and it makes you want to be better. This car is one of those machines. It's the kind of car that you sort of wish everybody would learn how to drive on, because then maybe they'd understand what we're on about. They'd understand the hobby. They'd understand why this means so much to so many of us. This car might just be perfection. It looks good, it drives amazing, it has everything you could want in it. It is the ultimate weekend toy. If I could go on and on about this car, hey, wait a minute. All right, we get it. It's a great handling car. Can we move on now? For 2019, the Mazda Miata got some significant upgrades. The biggest were to the drivetrain, the powertrain. It now makes 181 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque, and that torque lasts much longer. It goes all the way up to about 7,000 RPM, where you feel the pull, and the added power really enlivens the car and makes the Mazda Miata even more exciting. Rather than just being a good handling driver's car, it's now somewhat decently fast, on top of being one of the best handling cars that you can buy. It also now has a low inertia dual mass flywheel, which even strengthens the relationship between the already wonderful clutch and shifter. It's almost as though the clutch and shifter went to marriage counseling and they're actually really trying to work things out. Not that there was any discord before, they just wanted to strengthen their already great relationship so that it would be perfect. Now they want to really listen to each other. Like, really listen. You know, like what every woman wants, but every man is incapable of doing. Imagine if it were possible. The heavens would open up, the angels would sing, there would be like rainbows everywhere. That would be the Mazda's clutch and shifter relationship. What, you're seriously talking about marriage counseling in a car review? It's a metaphor. Metaphors are for nerds. You're right. I mean, oh my God, what in the world could that be? Wait, what, where? Inconceivable. Anyway, the Mazda's lightweight contributes to the purity of its driving experience. The Miata tips the scales at a mere 2,339 pounds, which makes it lighter than almost every other mainstream car on the market today. It also helps it achieve nearly 30 miles per gallon average in day-to-day driving, which is pretty incredible when it's weighed against the fun you'll be having. The Miata's commitment to weight and balance goes so far as to include the driver in the factor. So the Miata is not perfectly balanced when there's not a driver sitting inside, but when the driver is sitting inside, the Miata has nearly perfect 50-50 weight distribution because they factor in the weight of the driver in the driver's seat to achieve optimal balance. Unless, of course, you're 6'6" and weigh 230 pounds, and the balance might be off by a little bit. So are there any drawbacks to a car I've so lavishly praised? Well, sure, there are some. You just have to decide how much you care about them. First of all, it's small, and that's not so much a car problem as it is a me problem. No one goes into Miata ownership expecting the car to be roomy and plush and comforting. It's tight, but it's plenty big enough for most people, and the trunk is actually quite large and it's unaffected by the top being up or down. The interior materials are decent enough, but there's a fair amount of hard plastic in the cabin. Most people probably won't care though because of thoughtful touches like the cool body-colored top of the doors and the absolutely perfect feeling steering wheel and shifter. I don't know why I pantomimed that just then, like you didn't know what a steering wheel and a shifter was. You just decided to watch my videos to learn what a car is. But in case you are, welcome. That's a car, steering wheel, shifter. It's great. And as amazing as the seats are in true Roadster fashion, there is no slouching because your back is up against the rear bulkhead and you can't slouch unless you're like 5'2". The options aren't extensive, but they're comprehensive enough, and it has the usual safety features like blind spot monitoring, rear view camera, and brake assist when moving at slow speeds. It also has Mazda's rather intuitive infotainment system, which in my opinion is one of the better systems on the market, and the controls are largely the same as they are in the CX-5 or CX-9. So it's a nice integration in such a small package. Basically, there's not much to complain about, but there's a lot to like. So this ND generation Miata is the sum total of 30 years of careful engineering and evolution. But what matters is the way it handles, the way it makes you feel. And it wouldn't have gotten there without careful attention to detail, which resulted in one of the best driver's cars of all time. You're hopeless. You're ugly. Then so are you. No, I'm unique. That's literally the opposite of true. Why don't we just do the outro? If you like this video, please consider subscribing and joining this community. Make sure you give it a like, especially if you liked it. I'd really appreciate it. We'd really appreciate it. I didn't say that. And ring the bell for notifications so you always know what's going on the channel. Until next time, this is Jax, and I'm Jax. And we'll catch you in the next one. Okay, it's all gone wrong. It's all gone wrong. Just ride safe, drive safe. I'll catch you in the next video and we'll try this again. Special effects, what can I say? All right, peace. Why does every car that comes to the park today have something catastrophically wrong with it? Like wheel bearings out of, like transmission belts, like, you know. And here comes another car. At least it's not literally falling apart as it crosses over the little bridge. And people in the background. The downside of filming at a park. It's a nice day, and so everybody's coming in, and this is the only road into the main area. So, I'm gonna bring traffic cones and just like block off this road. No one's gonna know why. Thank you. People digging on the Miata. Downside of convertible, upside of a convertible. Oh, that guy in the Z peeled out because he's cool. I had to do the in-between lines.